تفضلوا لو سمحتوا.
Excuse me. For the translation. Good evening to you all. I'll start in Arabic and then I'll shift to English if you don't mind. So, بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. أرحب بصاحبي المعالي سامح توني وبالزملاء وزراء خارجية الإمارات، قطر، السعودية، وأمين سر اللجنة التنفيذية لمنظمة التحرير الفلسطينية في هذا الوقت العصيب الذي تفرض قيمنا الإنسانية، علاقاتنا القديمة المستمرة، حرصنا على أن نحمي كل شعوب منطقتنا من ويلات العنف والحرب، أن نعمل معا وبشكل غير منقطع لإنهاء هذه الكارثة التي تفجرت في السابع من شهر تشرين أول الماضي وتدهورت إلى الحرب التي تشنها إسرائيل على غزة الآن. حديثنا اليوم كان صريحا، كان مباشرا، كان شاملا وكان معمقا وبشفافية عكس مواقف عربية وأمريكية متباينة فيما يتعلق بما يجب فعله فوريا لإنهاء هذه الكارثة، لكنه أكد أيضا الحرص المشترك على استمرار انخراطنا بشكل مكثف لوقف ما لا يمكن إلا أن نصفه بكارثة ستسكن كوابيسها المنطقة لأجيال، وعلى أننا كلنا نريد السلام العادلة والشاملة على أساس حل الدولتين سبيلا لضمان أمن المنطقة، ضمان أمن الفلسطينيين، أمن الإسرائيليين، وأمن كل شعوب المنطقة. كان هنالك أيضا نقاط التقاء، وهذه نقاط التقاء أقصد بين الموقف الأمريكي والموقف الذي عبر عنه وزراء الخارجية العرب الذين كانوا في الاجتماع. شملت هذه النقاط ضرورة إيصال الدعم الإنساني الكافي والفوري والمستدام إلى غزة، استئناف تقديم الخدمات الإنسانية، حماية المدنيين، ضرورة التزام القانون الدولي والقانون الدولي الإنساني، إطلاق المدنيين، ورفض تهجير الفلسطينيين من وطنهم. وكما قلنا سابقا هذا بالنسبة لأشقائنا في جمهورية مصر العربية ولنا في الأردن ولكل الدول العربية جريمة حرب أخرى سنتصدى لها بكل طاقاتنا. في الدول العربية نطالب بوقف فوري لإطلاق النار وإنهاء هذه الحرب وما تنتجه من قتل الأبرياء وما تسببه من دمار، ونرفض توصيفها دفاعا عن النفس. هي حرب مستعرة تقتل المدنيين، تدمر بيوتهم، مستشفياتهم، مدارسهم، مساجدهم، كنائسهم، ولا يمكن تبريرها، ولن تجلب لإسرائيل أمنا، ولن تحقق في المنطقة سلاما. القتل يجب أن يتوقف، جرائم الحرب يجب أن تتوقف، تحصين إسرائيل من القانون الدولي أيضا يجب أن ينتهي. وإذا سمحت لي الآن سأنتقل إلى اللغة الإنجليزية. We cannot allow this war to undermine all that has been done to bring about just peace to the region. With every missile unleashed on Gaza, with every killing of a Palestinian child, and Israel has killed in this war more children than all global conflicts did since 2019. The whole region is sinking in a sea of hatred that will define generations to come. That is already starting to manifest itself in expressions and acts of hatred in the region, and to be honest, in the deplorable acts and expressions of Islamophobia and anti-Semitism. And that's something that we all stand against unequivocally, on principle, and in accordance with our human values. This is not a religious war. It's not a war between Muslims and Jews. This is defined in its context, and all our values, Muslim, Christian, Jewish, all other human values dictate that we work for peace and we stop this madness, and we do not allow for the very dangerous dehumanization that we see. Rage cannot and should not be allowed to destroy the lives of millions of people. We understand there is pain. Nobody in their right mind will belittle the pain that was felt by Israelis on October 7, and that's being felt by Palestinians and all of us. It doesn't matter of who we are, Arab, Muslims, Christian, Jews, human being. That pain cannot be belittled, but again, we cannot allow rage to determine where we go forward. We condemn the killing of all civilians. We condemn the killing of Palestinian civilians. We condemn the killing of Israeli civilians on October 7 and before and after, regardless of nationality, as I said. We're extremely worried on this situation on the West Bank. Again, killing and violation of international law cannot continue there. Settlers should not be allowed to rampage Palestinian communities and kill innocents in the West Bank. Israeli soldiers who brought despicable humiliation on Palestinians after illegally detaining them should be held accountable. Palestinians and Israelis deserve to live in peace, with dignity, with security, and freedom from occupation and freedom from fear. Only a just and lasting peace that fulfills the right of the Palestinian people to freedom in their sovereign state, with East Jerusalem as their capital in June 4, 1967 lines, living side by side, a secure Israel will bring security to all. The priority now is to ending this war, to saving innocent lives, to preventing further destruction, to restoring hope, and to stopping the very dangerous dehumanization. All lives matter to all of us. And Mr. Secretary, dear Tony, the U.S. has a leading role to play in these efforts. And on it, and on all of us, fall the very heavy responsibility of ending this catastrophe, achieving the just peace that is the right of every Palestinian, every Israeli mother, child, father, and that will ensure that none of them or any other in the region will ever have to live the horrors that this vicious cycle of violence and war is bringing. We will continue to work with you and with all our partners to fulfill this responsibility, to make sure that our common human values prevail, international law prevails, and peace for all prevail. Thank you so much. And if I now may give the floor to you, Tony.
Good afternoon, everyone. And let me first say that I'm grateful to His Majesty King Abdullah, to Foreign Minister Safadi, my friend Ayman, and his entire team for their hospitality, and for the opportunity to be with Foreign Minister Shukri, and also with Foreign Minister Faisal Farhan, Prime Minister Mohammed Al-Thani, Foreign Minister Abdullah bin Zayed, and Secretary General Hussein al-Sheikh. We appreciate the engagement of every country here, and we're particularly grateful to Jordan and to Egypt, two partners who have long worked to advance a two-state solution, for their dedication to a more stable and to a more peaceful Middle East. We come together here today sharing the same fundamental interest and objective: to end this conflict in a way that ensures lasting peace and security in the region. We may have different views and positions on certain necessary steps to achieve that objective, But today we reaffirmed our individual commitments to continuing to work toward that end, an end that we share. Throughout this conflict, countries across the Middle East and beyond have played an essential role in preventing its spread. Today, we all agreed on the importance of using our respective influence and capabilities to deter any state or non-state actor from opening another front in this conflict or taking other destabilizing actions. All of us have a direct interest in this. Our joint efforts have also been critical in increasing the flow of humanitarian assistance to Gaza. I'm particularly grateful to Egypt for its significant effort to facilitate a mechanism with Israel and with the United Nations to do just that. Each day, more than 100 trucks are moving to Rafah, up from 0 just a little over a week ago. But that is not nearly enough. Today, we spoke about ways to accelerate and expand the sustained delivery of aid. This morning, I had an opportunity to meet with Commissioner General Lazzarini of UNRWA, and I spoke with UNRWA staff that is located in Gaza. I heard firsthand about the extraordinary life-saving work that they're doing in Gaza in the face of extremely difficult conditions, and how we can expedite efforts to get assistance to them so that they can get it to the Palestinian people. We're also working to continue the progress we've made in getting our citizens, other foreign nationals, critically wounded people out of Gaza. But even as we welcome their safe exit, we remain resolutely committed and focused on securing the release of hostages held by Hamas. I had the opportunity to discuss this and the status of our ongoing efforts with Prime Minister Al-Thani this morning. We all spoke today about the clear need to protect Palestinian civilians. The United States supports Israel's right to defense against Hamas, a terrorist organization that attacked it brutally and that cares not a whit about the Palestinian people or their future. This is the same right that each of our countries has. But as Israel conducts its campaign, how it does it matters. Israel must take every possible measure to prevent civilian casualties. In my meetings with Israeli officials yesterday, I conveyed additional steps that they can and should take to do just that. Protecting civilians will help prevent Hamas from further exploiting the situation. But most important, it's simply the right and moral thing to do. When I see a Palestinian boy or girl pulled from the wreckage of a building, it hits me in the gut, just as it hits everyone in the gut. And I see my own children in their faces. And as human beings, how can any of us not feel the same way? This morning I heard from the UNRWA staff in Gaza, many of whom are displaced themselves, about the immense human toll that this conflict has taken. For UNRWA itself, they've lost 77 of their colleagues who are there simply trying to provide people with their basic needs. The trauma of being under constant bombardment and in constant danger, the inability to assure their own children that nothing will happen to them. What we have to do, more than anything else, all of us, everyone concerned, is to prevent the dehumanization of each other. If we don't do that, then we do exactly Hamas's work for it. So we have to look out for each other. We have to look out for every innocent life. Now, the United States believes that all of these efforts would be facilitated by humanitarian pauses. We believe pauses can be a critical mechanism for protecting civilians, for getting aid in, for getting foreign nationals out, while still enabling Israel to achieve its objective, to defeat Hamas. Yesterday, I spoke in depth with Israeli leaders about how, when, and where such arrangements could be implemented, and what needs to be done to make them possible. Today, regional partners discussed many of these same questions. We're all deeply concerned about escalating extremist violence against Palestinian civilians in the West Bank. This has been a serious problem that's only worsened since the conflict. I updated ministers today on my discussion with the Israeli government yesterday, where I underscored that incitement and extremist violence must be stopped, and perpetrators must be held accountable. As we work together to address each of these immediate challenges, we also have to concurrently work to build a secure and lasting peace. And for that to happen, we have to create the conditions to ensure that we do not find ourselves in the same place just weeks or months from now. We had substantial discussions today about our shared interest in creating the foundation for durable security and for enduring peace. The United States continues to believe that the sole viable path is a two-state solution, with Israelis and Palestinians each exercising their legitimate right to live in a state of their own with equal measures, security, of freedom, of opportunity, and dignity. And we discussed some of the meaningful and practical steps that we might take to help advance that proposition, to get us there. The United States and our partners will have different views on how best to advance or achieve these steps. But we all recognize that we cannot go back to the status quo. And we all understand that we not only have an interest, but a responsibility to do everything we can to chart a better path forward together. Now, none of us are under the illusion that this will be easy, particularly our partners from Egypt and Jordan, who have for decades worked to facilitate a real peace. But it's precisely now, when the stakes are highest, and even when the outlook seems darkest, that we have to intensify our work to meet this moment.
Thank you so much. Sameh, please, floor is yours.
أخي أيمن، صديقي توني، سادة الحضور، توجه بالشكر إلى أخي معالي الوزير أيمن الصفدي نائب رئيس الوزراء ووزير الشؤون الخارجية والمغتربين، السادة الوزراء العقد معنا اليوم والذي استهدف بحث تطورات الأزمة في غزة وإتاحة الدول العربية المشاركة الإعراب عن رؤية وموقف موحد تجاه هذه الأزمة. لقد حرصت خلال اللقاء على توضيح رؤية مصر المتوافقة مع رؤية أشقائها العرب في التعامل مع الأزمة، وأكدت على ضرورة مراعاة عناصر عنصر الوقت التعامل مع مستجداتها المتسارعة، وإن أحداث القتل المؤسفة التي تشهدها غزة لا يمكن تبريرها، وأننا لن نقبل الدخول في جدل لا طائل منه أو قبول محاولة تبرير هذه الممارسات المدانة باعتبارها إعمالا للحق الشرعي للدفاع عن النفس. سياسة العقاب الجماعي واستهداف إسرائيل للمدنيين والأبرياء والمنشآت المدنية والطبية وفرق الإنقاذ، إضافة لمحاولات التهجير القسري للفلسطينيين من أرضهم، لا يمكن أن تكون دفاعا شرعيا عن النفس في أي حال. إن مصر تبذل كل ما في وسعها لضمان استقبال المساعدات وإدخالها إلى قطاع غزة وتقديم العون في علاج الجرحى المدنيين، وستستمر في جهودها ذات الصلة رغم العراقيل الكبيرة والمتعمدة التي تواجهها. وفي هذا السياق شددت على حتمية تحقيق توافق فوري وشامل، وقف فوري وشامل لإطلاق النار في غزة دون قيد أو شرط، وأن تقلع إسرائيل عن مخالفتها المتكررة لقواعد القانون الدولي الإنساني وقوانين الحرب، ومضاعفة العمل لتأمين نفاذ المساعدات الإنسانية بصورة مستدامة وبالكميات التي تلبي احتياجات الشعب الفلسطيني الشقيق، وبما يفتح المجال للحديث لاحقا عن كيفية الخروج من هذه الأزمة، وقبل أن تتسع دائرة العنف وامتداد الصراع ليطال أمن واستقرار سائر شعوب المنطقة ويدخلها في نفق مظلم. كما أكدت خلال اجتماعنا على ضرورة الكف عن التعامل مع القضايا والأزمات التي تهدد السلم والأمن الدوليين بمعايير مزدوجة، في حين يسارع البعض في إدانة استهداف المدنيين ووصف الاعتداءات عليهم بالانتهاكات الصارخة للقانون الدولي الإنساني والتمسك بمطالب وقف إطلاق النار في أزمات أخرى، إننا نشهد معارضة الالتزام بذات المبادئ نفس الأطراف حينما يرتبط الأمر بالقضية الفلسطينية، وكأن دم الإنسان العربي أقل قيمة من دم أخيه الإنسان في أماكن أخرى، علما بأن أعداد من أزهقت أرواحهم من المدنيين في غزة على مدار الأسابيع القليلة الماضية وضمنهم العاملين في مجال الإغاثة والصحفيين لا يمكن تبريرها بأي ذريعة أو ادعاء. وفي هذا الصدد أننا ما زلنا نطلب بوقف فوري لإطلاق النار وبتوقف إسرائيل عن تعطيل دخول المساعدات الإنسانية وضمان النفاذ الآمن والسريع لها. كما نطلب التحقيق الدولي في الممارسات والانتهاكات الصارخة للقانون الدولي التي تشهدها هذه الحرب. وأخيرا فإن ما نشهده من تصعيد غير مسبوق ومأساة إنسانية ومن معاناة المدنيين إنما هو نتيجة التقاعس عن معالجة جذور المشكلة، تأخر استعادة الحقوق الفلسطينية غير القابلة للتصرف. وإذ أنني أكرر اليوم الرفض القاطع لأي محاولات لتصفية القضية الفلسطينية على حساب الشعب الفلسطيني أو دول المنطقة، أنني أطالب مجددا بالعمل على في أسرع وقت ممكن على إحياء عملية السلام وفقا لحل الدولتين في سبيل إنهاء الاحتلال الإسرائيلي وتجسيد الدولة الفلسطينية على خطوط الرابع من يونيو عام 1967 وعاصمتها القدس الشرقية. وشكرا.
شكرا سامح. And again, thank you Tony, thank you Sameh. I'm sure the three of us would love to stay and answer all your questions, but we really have a very tight schedule still ahead of us. So we'll take just very limited few number of questions, and I'd appreciate it if all our colleagues would just limit their intervention to one question and one question only. Sufyan, can you please handle that?
شكرا معاليك. نبدأ بالأستاذ خالد العيسوي وكالة أنباء الشرق الأوسط.
سؤالي لمعالي وزير الخارجية المصرية المعالي الوزير سامح شكري. يمكن فندم الاجتماع اليوم كان في توقيت هام، وأيضا حضور الاجتماع شخصيات هامة تتمثل في وزراء خارجية الدول العربية الهامة ذات التأثير والتأثر بالقضية الفلسطينية. هل معاليك يا فندم استشعرت اليوم أن الإدارة الأمريكية لديها يعني إرادة سياسية أو قدرة على وقف الاعتداءات المستمرة والمتكررة ضد المدنيين في قطاع غزة؟ وهل أيضا عرض من الجانب الأمريكي خلال اجتماعه مع وزراء الخارجية العرب أي خارطة طريق أو خطة لاستئناف عملية السلام أو الدفع بعملية السلام أو إنهاء الأزمة الراهنة؟ شكرا يا فندم.
شكرا جزيلا. أتصور أنه غير ملائم أن أتحدث عن الموقف الأمريكي في حضور معالي وزير الخارجية، لكن ما أستطيع أن أقوله بأنه حديث كان حديث معمق وحديث شامل وشفاف وحديث فيما بين دول تشترك في الرغبة في العمل بشكل فعال لاحتواء هذه الأزمة ووضع الأسس والحلول التي تعفي المنطقة من الصراعات التي تؤكد أهمية التعامل مع كل القضايا بمعايير واحدة، وأيضا الوصول إلى حماية المدنيين ونفاذ المساعدات، وأيضا أفق التعامل مع جذور الأزمة وهي عدم تنفيذ حتى الآن رغم السنوات العقود التي مضت ما هو متوافق عليه دوليا من حيث إقامة الدولة الفلسطينية حل الدولتين، واعتبار هذا هو ما يزيل الصراع والأعداء القائم والمخاطر المتولدة عن ذلك. نتطلع دائما العمل بشكل وثيق مع الولايات المتحدة. لدينا علاقة استراتيجية تقدر ما الإمكانيات المتوفرة لدى الولايات المتحدة، وبالتالي كان هناك اهتمام ومواضع كثيرة توافقنا عليها، وسوف نعمل خلال الفترة القادمة على وضع هذه الأفكار والرؤى موضع التنفيذ من أجل احتواء أزمة طاحنة، أزمة ثانية لابد من تضافر الجهود للتعامل معها وبشكل إيجابي، ليس فقط يعالج الأزمة الحالية ولكن يعالج جذور المشكلة كذلك.
شكرا عليك. سايمون لويس، رويترز.
Hi, thank you. Yeah, one question, but I'd appreciate an answer from all of you if possible. To the Egyptian and Jordanian ministers specifically, are you engaging in talks about the future of Gaza, a future of Gaza without Hamas, and what role you can play in that future? And Secretary Blinken, how do you respond to the calls from your allies here for a ceasefire? And are you hearing, are you finding receptive ears for your calls to talk about Gaza after Hamas? Thanks.
Simon, thanks very much for the question. It's our view that a ceasefire now would simply leave Hamas in place, able to regroup and repeat what it did on October 7th. And you don't have to take my word for it. Just a few days ago, a senior Hamas official said that it was their intent to do October 7th again and again and again. No nation, none of us can accept that. No one would find that tolerable. And so it is important to reaffirm Israel's right to defend itself, indeed its obligation to do so, and to take necessary steps so that October 7th can never happen again. But it's also very important the way Israel does that. And that's what we've talked to the Israeli government about, with taking every possible measure to protect human life, to prevent civilian casualties, as well as to ensure that those who are in need have the assistance that they need. To that end, I think we all shared deep concern about the plight of civilians in Gaza, men, women, and children who need most essential things to get by. We've worked very hard to make sure that that assistance can flow to them. But it's also one of the reasons why humanitarian pause would be so important, to make sure that we can maximize the assistance getting to Palestinians, that we can make sure that people can move about safely, that they can get to places where they're safe, and that, again, we can make sure that not only is aid flowing in, but those who are responsible for distributing it get in, the right structures can be built to make sure that people can benefit from it. So we're focused on this, and we'll continue the work that we're doing together with our partners to make sure that that assistance can get there.
Thank you, Tony.
All right. Well, as relates to the issue of a ceasefire, it is our position that a ceasefire is imperative to deal with the consequences, the humanitarian consequences of this conflict. And we believe that dealing with the various components of this crisis should be dealt with as well in an appropriate manner. But it is the international community's responsibility always to seek the cessation of hostilities and not to promote the continuance of violence and military activity that has a very dire impact on the well-being of the civilian population in a very restricted area, which has specific and special characteristics like Gaza. As for the issue of the future of Gaza, I believe that this is premature at this time. We have to concentrate on the subject at hand, whether it be the cessation of hostilities, addressing the humanitarian needs of the people of Gaza, addressing the issues of displacement and the provision of safety for the civilians, and addressing the overall context of the conflict. I believe that at this stage, those are the issues that we need to concentrate on. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. We're focused right now on stopping this war, stopping the destruction it's causing, stopping the killing that it's causing. What happens next? How can we even entertain what will happen in Gaza when we do not know what kind of Gaza will be left after this war stops? Are we going to be talking about a wasteland? Are we going to be talking about a whole population reduced to refugees? Simply, we do not have all the variables to even start thinking about that. I think we need to focus now on stopping this war, so at least we have we start even to begin to imagine the kind of miserable reality that will exist there. And after that, let me just be very, very clear. Gaza alone will just not cut it. We've been through security treatment of the conflict before. Where did it lead us? The only way going forward to achieve what we all want, which is a just and lasting peace that protects the rights of all, is to look at the comprehensive conflict, look about bringing the two-state solution back and realize it as soon as possible, convincing the Palestinians that they have a future, and again, creating conditions different from the miserable conditions of despair and anger and hatred and occupation in which this vicious cycle of violence erupted. So I think we need to get our priorities straight. Right now, we have to make sure the war stops. Right now, we have to make sure that we bring in sufficient, if enough food and water and medicine and fuel to Gazans, because with every minute of delay, a child or a woman or an elderly is dying because they don't have access to these basic services. So after that, again, we have to look at the comprehensive picture. We have to make sure that we do not contribute to creating the same conditions that in which this violence erupted. And I think we are all committed to working together on that. As we always say, the United States has a leading role. We need that role. The rest of us will have to do our part as well. Everybody will have to do their part, again, to make sure that we bring security and peace to the Palestinians and to the Israelis. Yeah.
شكرا. إياد تلفزيون المملكة.
يعطيكم العافية. معالي الوزير بلينكن، لماذا لا تضغط واشنطن على تل أبيب لوقف الحرب وإدخال الوقود بعد توقف 17 مستشفى واستشهاد أكثر من 9,000 فلسطيني؟ معالي سامح شكري
and allow for delivery of humanitarian aid after all what happened.
Thank you. We are intensely focused on the delivery of humanitarian assistance. On my last trip to the region, I spent considerable time with the Israeli government and then in consultation with the Egyptian government, the United Nations, on establishing a channel to make sure that we could get assistance into people who needed it in Gaza. And as I mentioned a short while ago, whereas just a little over a week ago, nothing was getting in. We had 0 trucks moving in. Today, I think we had 105 trucks move in to Gaza with essential needs for people. But as I also said, and as we all agree, that is not nearly enough. So what we're working on now is expanding that access, making sure that more is getting to people who need it, and that we have the structure in place to be able to absorb it, to use it, to distribute it effectively. This is exactly what we're doing. When I was in Israel yesterday, this was a big focus of my conversations with the Israeli government. And it's also, as I mentioned, one of the reasons why we think it would be important to have humanitarian pauses. That would further facilitate the ability to deliver aid, and not only to deliver aid, again, to expand the aid that we're delivering. So We're looking to that. We agreed with the government of Israel yesterday to look at how that might happen. There are a lot of questions that have to be answered about how to make that work. So we're focused on doing that. But again, we have been intensely focused on getting humanitarian assistance to people who need it in Gaza.
Question?
تامر الصمادي قناة الجزيرة.
تامر الصمادي قناة الجزيرة. السؤال للوزير بلينكن، بعد مرور ما يقرب من شهر على الحرب الإسرائيلية على قطاع غزة، ما هي النتائج التي حققتها إسرائيل سوى قتلها لأكثر من أو ما يقرب من 10,000 مدني غالبيتهم من النساء والأطفال؟ ما هي النتائج التي حققتها إسرائيل غير ذلك؟ وما هو رقم الضحايا على يعني وجه التحديد من المدنيين الذي سيدفع الولايات المتحدة إلى التوقف مليا، إلى الالتفات إلى هذه المجزرة المفتوحة، والطلب بشكل حازم من إسرائيل وقف هذه المجزرة ووقف شلال الدم في القطاع المحاصر.
What took place on October 7th defies almost the human ability to digest or describe. And I think for many, that day has receded in their minds and in their consciousness. But I can say this and I'll say it again. Not a single one of the countries represented here or that met together today, or for that matter, pretty much any country in the world, and simply accept the slaughter of its citizens and do nothing about it. So, we maintain again that Israel has a right and indeed an obligation to defend itself and to try to take the steps necessary to ensure that what happened on October 7th never happens again. But equally, it is very important how Israel does this. And in particular, it's important to take every possible measure to protect civilians and to prevent harm to them, as well as to ensure that those who need assistance get it. And in our conversations with the Israeli government, including just yesterday, we have pointed to steps that they could and should take to minimize harm to civilians, to prevent civilian casualties. Now, this is also an extraordinary challenge. Hamas cynically, monstrously, embeds itself in the midst of civilians, puts its fighters, its commanders, its weapons, its ammunition, its command and control in residential buildings, under schools and in schools, under hospitals and in hospitals, under mosques and in mosques. It's monstrous. But nonetheless, Israel has an obligation to abide by the laws of war, humanitarian law, and to do everything possible to prevent civilian casualties. And this is very much part of what we're saying to the Israeli government and what I said again yesterday. At the same time, providing humanitarian assistance to those in need, making sure that men, women, and children in Gaza are cared for. This is also an intense focus of our actions, including with the Israeli government.
Thank you. And before I close, I just want to reaffirm once again that we're going to continue to work together, bridge whatever gaps we have in our position, because ultimately we want the same thing. But again, I just want to say one thing. Imagine you're a Palestinian father, mother. You have to leave your home and the already miserable existence of a refugee camp in Gaza. You take your kids to the south. You take shelter in a hospital. And you're looking at the eyes of your children, and you know you cannot protect them. You know that you cannot find a place where they can escape the bombing. How do you explain to these that this is self-defense? How do you explain to a father whom we saw on CNN yesterday in the rubble looking for 4 children of his that are still buried in the rubble and he he cannot find them. I think we need to remind each other of our humanity. I think we need to accept that killing more people will not bring those who are lost on both sides, as tragic as the loss is. I think we need to all emphasize that everything we can do to save one more life is imperative upon all of us. I don't want to go into characterization of what the international law says about that and what the international law says about this. But I would say what we all, as human beings, as you said, as Sameh said, as we all say, as human beings, we just cannot accept to see all that killing unfolding, to see all that reduction of life to a complete loss. How can we justify to anybody that killing 9,000 people, killing 3,700 children, destroying 150,000 houses, destroying hospitals? How can we justify that this is self-defense? I think let's get back to the basic. Let's step back and take a pause. And again, we all understand the pain, but this war is just going to produce more pain for Palestinians, for Israelis. And this is going to push us all again into the abyss of hatred and dehumanization that will make killing even more acceptable. So that needs to stop. That's our priority. It has to stop now. It has to end. And we should all work for a future when a Palestinian child sees an Israeli child, they see in each other a potential friend, not a future enemy. I think that's what we need to do. And I look forward to working with all our colleagues and friends here to create that reality and just once and for all end the need for war and the need for violence and end conditions in which only misery and an environment that enables the kind of extremism that produces Ben-Gvir and Smotrich also on the side of Israel, that will also end. Thank you so much. Appreciate it.